I don't really draw from my own life, like, at all. I look at, and I don't look at them as, like, I just look at them as human beings, you know? Not as, like, teenagers. I mean, I've been really,
Happy April, everyone. It's Stress Awareness Month, so I hope you haven't had too much anxiety about your AI glazing boss forcing you to use Microsoft Copilot for everything. It's been a while since I've done this series, and I know some of you have missed it since we all love when actors that are well-known but go under the radar, or simply overshadowed by their superstar counterparts doing half the work, get appreciated. I thought, why not bring it back with an amazing actor who also looks stressed the hell out 24/7. Dane DeHaan's career is defined by a particular kind of miscalculation. He's talented enough to carry scenes, he's charismatic enough to command attention, and skilled enough to deliver compelling performances. The problem is that he often seems to believe the film exists in service of his character, not the other way around. This becomes especially apparent in supporting roles. DeHaan often dominates ensemble dynamics, and nobody talks about it. He dominates them. He insists on being the narrative's focal point, even if he's not top billing most of the time. The result is films that become visibly unbalanced the moment he appears on screen. The story lurches toward him, other characters recede, and what should be a supporting role metastasizes into something that threatens to consume the entire film. It's not that he lacks subtlety or tries to steal the show, it's that he applies his considerable talents with the assumption that the audience came to watch him, not the story he's supposed to be supporting. Once you notice this pattern, it becomes impossible to unsee. Let's get into it.
I don't understand how you guys can be so angry.
You don't understand how we can be angry? Andrew, you put somebody in the hospital tonight, okay? Do you understand that? Andrew, look at me. You put a guy in the hospital. How do you feel about that?
Chronicle follows 3 high school students, Andrew, his cousin Matt, and their classmate Steve, who develop telekinetic abilities after discovering an underground object of unclear origin. The early sections of the film operate within recognizable coming-of-age territory, with it just being a bunch of friends having fun with their new superpowers. Flight, pranks, stuff that we would all do. But Andrew, consistently the most isolated and the most abused of the 3, takes to the abilities faster than the others and with greater intensity. The film's shift hinges on Andrew. As the powers grow, the social scaffolding around him continues to collapse, his father's violence escalates, and his one point of genuine external connection, Steve, is removed abruptly. By the final act, Andrew has reframed his own existence. He is an apex predator, and the violence that follows is, in his reading, simply the natural order asserting itself. DeHaan plays Andrew from the inside out. The exterior hunched posture, averted eye contact, a voice that rarely commits to full volume, communicates the damage before any scene contextualizes it. He wears victimhood as a default physical state, which makes the moments where Andrew allows himself genuine pleasure, specifically during the early flying sequences, land with disproportionate emotional weight. DeHaan lets those scenes breathe. The looseness he brings to Andrew in those moments is specific. It's not joy exactly. Getting powers is always pretty cool no matter who you are. But it's more so the temporary absence of bracing for something. The anger, when it surfaces, doesn't arrive as a gear shift. DeHaan keeps it underneath most of the performance, which means when it does break through, it carries the force of everything that preceded it. The hospital scene, the fights with his dad, the final confrontation, they read as a character running out of alternatives. Where the performance is most precise is in Andrew's self-awareness. He knows what he is. He knows what's happening to him. Dane plays this without softening it into self-pity or hardening it into detachment. Andrew is lucid about his own collapse, and that lucidity is what makes the Predator monologue land as tragedy. A less controlled performance would have made Andrew frightening. DeHaan makes him recognizable, which is considerably more difficult and considerably more damaging. I'm not one to make fan castings because I think they're kind of pointless, but if they ever make a live-action adaptation of the Cape series by Joe Hill, I'd like it to be known that I was the first to say that Dane DeHaan would be the perfect casting choice.
Sorry about your dad.
You got your braces on. Now, there's nothing to distract from your unibrow.
Moving on to my favorite Spider-Man film by far, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. It's not really about writing quality all the time, this movie just hits me right in the feels. I mean, just listen to that triumphant score with the perfect swinging mechanics. But we're here to talk about Dane, so let's focus on that. He's doing something specific with Harry Osborn that the film around him isn't always equipped to support. The role sits inside a crowded sequel with competing tonal priorities, and his performance doesn't always get the space it needs. What's there is still worth examining because Harry, as DeHaan, is the most psychologically grounded interpretation the character has received outside of comic books, which is a notable achievement given how little the script invests in earning it. 15 minutes in a 2.5-hour movie is all it took for him to outdo James Franco across the entire Raimi trilogy. Most of you already know what this movie's about, so we'll look at it from his perspective. Harry Osborn returns to New York following his father's death, inheriting Oscorp and a genetic plot device. Condition that killed Norman and will kill him. His reconnection with Peter Parker coincides with his growing fixation on Spider-Man's blood as a potential cure. When Peter refuses and Oscorp's board moves to have him removed, Harry's desperation accelerates into recklessness. He pursues the spider-venom as a last resort, transforms, and the film ends with him directly responsible for Gwen Stacy's death. Like I said before, the arc is compressed by the film's competing priorities, but what it establishes is a man for whom every institutional structure, family, company, friendship, either fails him or becomes something he dismantles on the way to becoming the Green Goblin, for all of 20 minutes at least. Dane plays Harry as someone who learned early that composure was a form of leverage, and the performance tracks what happens when that composure stops working. The entitlement reads as inherited behavior rather than personality. Harry performs authority because it's the only relational mode he was modeled, not because it comes naturally. DeHaan makes that distinction legible without underlining it, which is what separates the performance from a more straightforward rich kid unraveling reading. The illness is the destabilizing variable, and he calibrates its progression carefully across limited screen time. Harry doesn't become erratic in a single scene. The performance stages it as inhibitions dropping in sequence, each interaction peeling back another layer of the control he's been maintaining. The scene where he confronts Peter about the blood is the clearest demonstration of this. DeHaan pitches it somewhere between a business negotiation and a plea, and the instability underneath is present in the way the register keeps threatening to shift. He's not asking. He's barely managing not to beg. And what he's asking for isn't too much, not even taking into account that it's his best friend under there, and he won't even help him for any good reason. Rewatching this scene while doing research for the Radcliffe video is what made me want to make this one, and it hits even harder when you have the context. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is better than Far From Home. Yeah, that's right, I said it. Anyways, what the performance handles most precisely is the gap between Harry's self-image and his actual position. He presents as someone still in control of his situation long after that control has dissolved, and DeHaan plays the moments where that fiction cracks with restraint. A look held a beat too long, a smile that doesn't complete itself. The Goblin transformation is brief, but he doesn't reframe it as a separate character like Defoe would. The cruelty and the chaos of those final scenes are continuous with everything Harry has been suppressing, damage finding the only direction left available to it. It's such a shame that he didn't get to make a return with the rest of the Spidey villains. I'd have loved to see that confrontation with his Peter, but no, we had to shove the fucking Lizard and Electro instead.
Jack knows the tricks. You weren't gonna tell me?
We both know why you can't come.
Let's move to Kill Your Darlings. The film covers Allen Ginsberg's first year at Columbia in 1944 and his absorption into the circle of writers who would form the Beat generation. Lucian Carr sits at the center of that circle, intellectually restless, socially dominant, and entangled in a relationship with David Kammerer that has long since crossed from mentorship into obsession. When Carr kills Kammerer, the murder becomes both rupture and catalyst, fracturing the group's idealism while simultaneously clarifying what each of them is willing to protect. The film positions Carr not as peripheral cause, but as the event horizon around which everyone else's identity is organized. Dane plays Carr as someone who has constructed an entire self out of the effect he produces in other people, and is aware enough of the construction to find it both useful and exhausting. The magnetism operates through the specific quality of attention Carr extends when he wants something, and the equally specific quality of its withdrawal when he doesn't. DeHaan makes the gap between those two states the primary instrument of the performance. When Carr is present with someone, really present, the scene reorganizes around it. When he withdraws, you feel the temperature drop. The film asks DeHaan to sustain an ambiguity that most performances in this register collapse prematurely. Carr is neither straightforward victim of Kammerer's obsession, nor cynical manipulator who engineered it. He sits in the uncomfortable middle throughout, someone who used the dynamic deliberately, who understood its currency, and who is also genuinely and reasonably frightened by what it has become. That dual awareness is sustained without resolution, which is the correct reading of the character and the harder acting choice. Collapsing it in either direction would make Carr more sympathetic or more culpable, but no, he keeps both pressures active simultaneously. The killing itself is played without catharsis. DeHaan frames it as a decision already made arriving at its execution. No hesitation, but no relief either. What follows, the guilt and the legal fallout, doesn't retroactively simplify who Carr was before it. The performance doesn't ask for absolution and doesn't position the murder as revelation. Carr at the end is the same person he was at the beginning, just one act further into consequences he was always moving toward.
Close your eyes. Close your eyes.
Before we move forward, let's take a look back at one of his earlier supportive roles. Jason Glanton grows up without knowing his father, raised by Romina and her partner Kofi, who functions as his de facto parent. It isn't until his mid-teens that Kofi tells him Luke's name, giving him enough to find Robin and piece together who his father was and how he died. That knowledge lands inside an already unstable adolescence. Jason is directionless, running with AJ Cross, a volatile and manipulative peer whose identity he doesn't yet know is directly tied to his own history. When he discovers that AJ's father, Avery, is the cop who killed Luke, the film's generational architecture closes around him. Jason is the point where both narratives converge, and the weight of that convergence is what DeHaan is asked to carry. Jason is someone shaped by an absence he can't fully name. The restlessness is there from his first scenes, not the physical, forward-propelled restlessness of Luke, but something more directionless, more adolescent. Jason doesn't know what he's moving toward. He barely knows what he's moving away from. DeHaan plays that lack of orientation without editorializing it, which keeps the character from reading as simply troubled. He's a person with no usable narrative about himself, and the performance reflects that vacancy without filling it prematurely. The friendship with AJ is where DeHaan does his most careful work. Jason is being used, and on some level registers it, but AJ is also the closest thing he has to a peer who operates at his emotional intensity. DeHaan plays the dynamic as someone who knows the relationship is costing him something, without being able to calculate exactly what. When the truth about their father surfaces, the reaction lands as something that reorganizes information Jason already had without realizing it. The scene where he takes Avery into the woods is the performance's most demanding stretch. Jason has a gun and a grievance and 15 years of inherited absence behind him, and DeHaan plays it without tipping into either catharsis or menace. What Avery's breakdown produces in Jason is deflation, the recognition that the answer he's been moving toward doesn't resolve anything. He takes the wallet, leaves Avery alive, and mails the photograph to Romina. DeHaan plays the closing beats as someone who has reached the end of a logic that turned out to be incomplete and has to figure out what comes after that without any existing framework to guide him. The supporting work across these films shares a common architecture. DeHaan is consistently playing people whose internal logic is coherent, but whose relationship to the world around them is structurally misaligned. The roles are reactive in their orientation, shaped against other characters and larger narratives. What changes when he moves to the center is that the camera has nowhere else to go. The performance has to generate its own gravity rather than disrupt someone else's. Chronicle is the earliest and most successful instance of that. The two clearest tests of it as a consistent capability are Valerian and A Cure for Wellness. One a failure of fit, one a near total vindication.
Rainbow, Berlin.
Tough choice.
I'm afraid of a kiss. Like the kiss of a bee. I suffer like this and wake endlessly.
Valerian and Laureline are special operatives in the 28th century, tasked with maintaining order across a vast intergalactic civilization. Sounds like two overpriced premium soap companies. The film's central mystery involves a dying species, a protected zone at the heart of the space station Alpha, and a cover-up reaching into the highest levels of human government. Valerian is nominally the lead, his name is in the title, but Luc Besson's script positions him as a delivery mechanism for forward plot momentum and surface-level charm. As you could probably tell if you've seen the film, he's not really good at that. The world around him is extraordinarily detailed. He is not. The problem isn't his performance exactly, it's the collision between his specific register and what the role requires. Valerian is written as a cocksure, wisecracking operative who wears his competence casually, the kind of character that runs on effortless confidence and ready-made charisma. I think I should start calling more people cocksure and provide absolutely no explanation. DeHaan's instrument doesn't naturally produce those frequencies. Alright, now it sounds like I'm really going for innuendos. His strength is interiority, pressure, the suggestion of something unresolved underneath the surface. Valerian has no underneath. The character is entirely surface, and DeHaan visibly has nothing to grip. The result is a performance that reads as effortful where it should read as breezy. The charm lands flat, the banter with Cara Delevingne doesn't find a rhythm, and the action sequences lack the physical looseness the role is designed around. DeHaan isn't miscast in the conventional sense of being wrong for the character's function. He's miscast because the character's function runs directly counter to what he does well. So I guess the definition of being miscast. The film needed someone who generates presence through projection, whereas he generates presence through containment, and containment has nowhere to go in a role this externally oriented. What's worth noting is that the few scenes where Valerian is required to be serious, moments of genuine consequence or moral weight, he handles without difficulty. They're brief, and the film moves past them quickly, but they indicate that a differently written version of the role could have worked. The issue is Besson's conception, not DeHaan's capability. It feels pretty soulless at the end of the day.
Baron was burned alive on his wedding night 200 years ago.
Yeah, but this is happening now. People come here for the cure. That's what the Baron was looking for. His wife was sick.
She wasn't sick. She was infertile.
Lastly, we're going to look at a cure for wellness. Lockhart is a young, ambitious financial executive sent to a remote Swiss wellness retreat to retrieve his company's CEO, who has refused to return. What begins as a straightforward retrieval mission deteriorates as Lockhart becomes increasingly trapped within the facility, first by a car accident that fractures his leg, then by the retreat's methods, its director, and the mystery accumulating around a young woman named Hannah, who has apparently lived there her entire life. The film operates as gothic horror, drawing on Shutter Island's institutional paranoia and classic European horror aesthetics. Lockhart moves from skeptic to prisoner to unwilling participant in something far older and more specific than corporate malfeasance. Lockhart enters the film as a deliberately unsympathetic protagonist, ambitious, ethically compromised, dismissive, and DeHaan commits to that baseline without softening it for early audience alignment. The character's arrogance is functional. Lockhart's professional conditioning tells him that every system has an angle, and every person has a price, which makes the retreat's resistance to that framework the specific source of his unraveling. DeHaan plays the early sections with a clipped impatience that reads as someone accustomed to environments that respond to pressure, encountering one that doesn't. The physical deterioration the film puts Lockhart through is extensive, and DeHaan carries it without leaning on it for sympathy. The leg injury, the treatments, the progressive disorientation, these are played as obstacles to his agenda, rather than sources of pathos, which keeps the character's edge intact as his circumstances become increasingly desperate. What shifts across the film's runtime is not Lockhart's personality, but his framework. The professional logic he applies to everything stops generating useful output, and Dane tracks that recalibration with precision, scene by scene. The horror register is where the performance demonstrates the most range. DeHaan moves through confusion, revulsion, and genuine terror without any of it feeling performed for effect. The reactions are scaled to what the character would plausibly experience, rather than what the genre typically amplifies. In the film's more extreme sequences, that restraint becomes the unsettling element. Lockhart's fear is quiet and specific, which reads as more credible than hysteria would. By the final act, DeHaan has taken a character who entered the film fully armored and rendered him genuinely raw through the sustained, incremental removal of every defense the character arrived with. What connects these performances across a decade isn't range in the conventional sense. DeHaan isn't exactly a chameleon, and the roles that ask him to be reveal the limits of that approach clearly. What he actually offers is depth of interiority and the ability to make internal logic visible without externalizing it. The supporting work is where that capability found its most consistent outlet, functioning as a destabilizing force inside other people's narratives. The leading roles are more uneven, but A Cure for Wellness and Chronicle demonstrate what centering that instrument looks like when the material meets it correctly. Valerian demonstrates what happens when it doesn't. The through line across all of it is a performer whose best work makes you feel the weight of what a character is carrying without the character ever putting it down long enough for you to see it clearly. If you'd love to see more of this, where he plays a major lead, he's pretty good in 000. I mean, I only started watching it, but maybe it deserves its own video, who knows. Thanks for watching, see you next week.